All right, everybody, welcome back to Horn Takes Live. I'm your host, Sean Redfern. We got one more Saturday without college football, folks. Just one. And then we'll have college football until probably sometime in December between conference championship games and bowl games. Got 16 days until Texas football. If you're a diehard Texas Longhorn fan, the number 16 probably has different meanings for you, maybe has several meanings for you. I'm an old history type guy. My original undergrad was history until I changed to something else, but always loved history, always loved really like war history was what I was really interested in, but always loved history. And the number 16, what prompted me today, I do a Twitter post every day. We got so many days left till Texas football. 16 made me think about the great James Street. Posted a pretty cool video on my Twitter. Some of these people don't embed their videos or don't set up their videos where you can embed them. You guys suck. Always, when you upload a video to YouTube, go and click the little button that says embed, allow embedding, so people can embed it in things like Twitter. Anyways, the great James Street, undefeated as a quarterback at the University of Texas, 20-0. James Street was a guy that nobody really expected much out of when he got to Texas. He's been described as not a good runner and not a good passer. But he must have been something. He must have been a competitor because just in his final season alone, he had comebacks against Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Notre Dame. And these were, man, we're talking back in the day during the wishbone, like run the ball all the time. You're down by two touchdowns in that time. That's a lot. I mean, we're talking scores of games were like 17-14. 10-3, 21-17, like not a lot of points getting scored. So being down by a couple of touchdowns back then was a big deal. And he had a lot of double-digit comebacks. I think probably the most famous of all, Street to Peschel against Arkansas. I know the Arkansas fans will love that one. 4th and 3 down inside their own end of the field. And they do like a little play action veer, off the veer run, chunks it down the field, right over double coverage. Randy Peschel makes the catch. They go on to score to win the game. And eventually the national championship. James Street was also a very, very good pitcher for the University of Texas. 29-8 as a starter. College World Series. Pitched a perfect game. There's been a lot of really great Texas Longhorns. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find one as legendary, just overall as legendary as James Street. Rest easy, James Street. Before we get into it today, check us out on Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. You can find us at all 4 of those places at Horn Takes. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the Special Forces group at the University of Texas. It's the most overlooked position group in all of football, the Special Forces. Plays don't happen all the time. Most of the time, the Special Forces plays are not flashy. A lot of times, it's just boring. A lot of times, people get up, go get a drink during a Special Forces play. I know I'm guilty. Go get something to eat. Switch it over to another game. But these special forces plays, these handful of special forces plays, every single game are absolutely pivotal to the success of the team. In a touchdown on a special forces play is almost it's almost like hitting a grand slam home run. It's that type of momentum swing. And by the way, folks, I say special forces just because I'm an old Army dude. And I think special forces sounds a lot cooler than special teams. So we're going to call special teams special forces forever, forever, never going back. You got your field goals and your extra points. Field goals, huge deal. Aren't kickers interesting? Isn't being a kicker got to be an interesting thing? You stand on the sideline for probably 95% of the game. And then in a lot of games, you come out there on the field to make really pivotal plays, like kick an extra point. Doesn't seem like much, right? It's close. It's just 1 point. Teams lose by 1 point a lot. Texas lost by 1 point to Alabama last year. A lot of times these guys have to come out on the field after watching the whole game go by and just barely participating at all and kick a game-winning field goal or a game-tying field goal with no time left or very little time left. Kickoffs are important. Getting the ball down the field, hopefully through the back of the end zone, so there's no chance of return. But if there is a return, making plays. Kickoff return can be just a game-changing deal. Punt return. I remember back in 2008 at the Cotton Bowl at the Red River Shootout. I was there with my dad. Oklahoma jumped out on Texas pretty good. And it was starting to look like it might could get a little bit ugly. And then Jordan Shipley rattles off a real long kickoff return. The Texas crowd is right back in it. Texas goes on to make up ground, take the lead, win that game. Special forces play. Protection on the special forces plays. A block kick of any kind could be huge. Being able to go block a kick. Those are huge. Blocking kick, recover it, run it in for a touchdown. That is a massive play. Special forces can win you that battle. They can win you the game. And I think too many, probably even coaching staffs, overlook the role that special forces can play in a college football game. Let's check out who's gonna be the main names for the Texas Longhorn Special Forces this year. Place kicker Junior Bert Auburn, the dude with some crazy hair. Man, he has got, I don't know the character. There's some cartoon running around where the dude's got big orange hair. I don't know the name of the cartoon. I don't even think I've watched the cartoon. I think maybe I've seen a commercial of the cartoon. Walked through a room that had the cartoon playing in passing or something. But that's what Bert Auburn reminds me of. It was honorable mention all Big 12 last year. Hit 80% of his field goals. I don't know how good that is. It doesn't sound like it's that good, but I really don't know. I think Bert Auburn's biggest kick last year was that 49-yarder that he made under 2 minutes left in the Alabama game to give Texas the lead. It was his longest, for sure. Probably his biggest as a Texas Longhorn. Bert Auburn had a kick get blocked in that Alabama game, in a one-loss game. So again, special forces can make a huge impact on the game, even though you don't see a lot of plays, and even though a lot of people get up when those plays are happening. You shouldn't. Kickoff sophomore Will Stone, 26 touchbacks last season. I like to see some more touchbacks out of Will Stone. I don't know if it's a leg strength problem or if it's a strategy, and I won't call it a problem if it's a strategy thing, but I'll say I don't agree with the strategy of not kicking the ball through the back of the end zone if my place kicker or my kickoff guy can kick the ball through the back of the end zone. Sure, the ball goes out to the 25. I mean, how many times do you tackle somebody short of the 25 if they return it? It's not much. And if it is, it's not by a lot. Talking a few yards. Not sure the risk reward there is worth it to allow teams to return the ball. Punter, senior transfer, Ryan Sanborn. This guy was a 2-time team captain at Stanford. I didn't realize that until today. 2-time All Pac-12 honorable mention guy. Averaged almost 42 yards a punt. And this is a cool stat for him. 64 of his 192 career punts have been downed inside the 20. That seems like a lot to me. That's roughly 30%. That seems like a really high percentage of punts downed inside the 20. Ryan Sanborn will also serve as the holder on field goals and extra point attempts. A lot of people always forget the long snappers. Not here. Not here at Horn Takes Podcast. Not when we're talking special forces. Sophomore Lance St. Louis. Didn't know this about. I didn't even know he was the long snapper. I'm going to be honest. He snapped in 10 games last season. He's now the man. He was rated the #1 long snapper in the country by Cole's Kicking and ESPN out of high school. Didn't even know ESPN rated long snappers, but there you go. Another 5-star recruit for Steve Sarkisian. And he actually was a 5-star by Cole's Kicking. So they do the whole star things too. 5-star long snapper. Boom. Punt returner, you're going to see junior Xavier Worthy. He's got 193 yards in his career, 10.7 yards per return. If you've seen Xavier Worthy play, you know he's a threat to go anytime. I think the key to busting him loose this year is a couple things. Punters making mistakes, because I don't think a lot of punters are going to punt to him. And then the other 10 guys on the field executing in the blocking game. I'd like to see him get loose this year, though. And I think you're going to see probably Jonte Cook, maybe Trey Wisner back there a little bit early in the season. I think if you have guys, you see it a lot where special forces players are also the starters because they're usually the best football players on the team, especially the skill guys, right? So it makes sense. But if you got multiple guys, multiple skill guys that you can rotate through, and maybe you don't have to, maybe the starter at his position can sit out a play or two, 3 or 4 plays a game because of that, could be worth it. It's definitely good to have the depth there. Kickoff returner is going to be senior Keelan Robinson, 403 return yards in his career, long of 52, average of 31. I don't know where that ranks. I don't know if that would be considered good. It sounds pretty good to me. Robinson had a punt return for a touchdown last season, but not a kickoff return for a touchdown last season. But he set himself a goal this year. He wants to score 2 touchdowns in the return game and have 2 blocks on the other side of the deal. If you don't know, Keelan Robinson is a guy that they, on punt block, they move him around all over the place, and he just has a knack for getting back there and being at the right spot at the right time to block the ball. He had a punt block last season. I think, again, you could see a guy like DeAndre Moore, Jonte Cook, Trey Wisner, maybe even Xavier Worthy back there. Special Forces, the Special Forces unit for the Texas Longhorns, if it can make big plays, I think that'll be very crucial for Texas's success this season. I think the Special Forces unit is very, very talented. And I think they're going to make a big impact this year. Everybody's expecting a lot of great things from Texas. If this Texas team does what a lot of people think it can, goes on to win the Big 12, possibly gets a playoff berth, look for those Special Forces guys. They will have made some plays. Week 10 opponents for the University of Texas this year is the Kansas State Wildcats. Texas looks to add to their 6-game winning streak against Kansas State in the friendly confines of Darrell K. Royal. Last season, they went up to Manhattan and got a pretty decent lead on Kansas State and then needed a fumble recovery to seal it at the end because they let Kansas State get back in it. That's been kind of one of the themes we've seen under Steve Sarkisian. Lots of good offense in the first half, get a big lead, and then for whatever reason, the offense just fails to execute in the second half. And the defense plays too many snaps and gives up points, and then the other team gets back in the game. What we didn't see in year one under Steve Sarkisian that we saw last year in those situations was the defense make some plays. Last home game was in 2021. It was a win, 22-17 over Kansas State. Kansas State's coming off of a pretty good season. OU does suck, Kyler Savage Sports. I appreciate you joining today. Kansas State went 10-4 last year, Big 12 champs. Just played a really gritty, like just the type of game you expect out of Kansas State. In that Big 12 championship game and did just enough to knock off TCU to mess up their, at that point, undefeated season. This Kansas State group has 12 returning starters, 7 on offense, 5 on defense. Key returners, QB Will Howard. And I didn't realize Will Howard, maybe he didn't play the whole season last year, but if he did, they just don't pass a lot or he's not very good at it. 1,600 yards, 15 touchdowns. Running back DJ Giddens is back, 518 yards, 6 touchdowns. Tight end Ben Sano, 447 yards, 4 touchdowns. And this is a sort of a critical thing, I think, for Kansas State. They got a whole mess of offensive linemen back that contributed greatly. They might have all not have been starters last season, but they got a lot of guys, 4 guys for sure, that have played a ton of football for Kansas State last year. They got tackle KT Levinston, guards Hadley Panzer and Cooper Beebe, and center Hayden Gillum are all coming back. All these guys had over 600-700 snaps a piece. So a lot of continuity there. And these dudes, Kansas State ran the ball really well last year. These dudes paved the way for like 2,700 yards rushing for Kansas State last year. He returns on defense. Defensive ends, Khalid Duke, Brendan Mott, 9 sacks between those two. Linebackers, Daniel Green and Austin Moore, 145 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 3 interceptions between those two. And then defensive back, Kobe Savage. I don't know if he's any kin to Kyler Savage Sports, who's watching us live right now, but Kobe Savage had 3 interceptions. By the way, folks, Kyler Savage Sports was the first person to ever retweet me. So he holds a special place in my heart. Thank you, Kyler Savage Sports. Key losses on offense, and there's some big ones for Kansas State. The biggest of all, running back Deuce Vaughn, 1,500 yards, 9 touchdowns on the ground, 378 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns. Wide receivers, Malik Knowles, Cade Warner, 1,200 yards between those two guys and 7 touchdowns. And then the big loss on defense was Felix Anadike Uzama. I think I didn't trash that completely. 8.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 40 total pressures. This guy was the defensive player of the year in the Big 12, a first-round pick. Nobody thinks he should have been the defensive player of the year, but he was. Everybody knows that Jalen Ford was the defensive player of the year in the Big 12 last year. But Uzama has the hardware and that first-round draft pick. Then you got DB Josh Hayes, 71 tackles, 7 pass breaks for him. DB Sincere Mason with 3 interceptions. So on defense, actually on both sides of the ball, not a bunch of huge losses in terms of numbers, but certainly some key guys are gone. I think what'll help them, though, on offense for sure is that offensive line having so much experience. I think we're not doing picks today. We're not saying Texas is going to win or lose or what's the score going to be because we haven't seen any football yet. That'd be stupid. I say this, Texas, this is going to be their second really physical, gritty type opponent in a row. They got BYU. They got Kansas State. I think you look at the schedule and look at the expectations. We're just looking at roster, right? Texas should be 6-1, maybe 7-0 heading into this game. I know that sounds crazy. It sounds crazy for me to say that. But I think it's realistic for this Texas team. If Texas is 6-1, 7-0-ish heading into this game, there's a whole lot of really exciting things out in front of them. And I think the key for them at this point in the season is going to be staying focused each week. You look at this Texas schedule, and it is not like insanely hard. But I do think there are a lot of really good teams on it and a lot of really dangerous teams on it. And if Texas ever loses focus, a lot of these teams are the type of teams that could jump up and get them and ruin something really good. Something that Texas fans haven't seen in a really long time, which is a really good, really competitive Texas football team. I think the other key for Texas in this game is, again, just matching the physicality. We talked about it last show with BYU. They're going to be rough. BYU is always a physical team. Kansas State is always a physical team. Texas will have to match that, and not just those 2 games. There'll be several games where Texas is going to have to match physicality early and attack back with their own brand of physicality. I think ultimately this is a game Texas can and absolutely should win. And again, we're talking in a bubble here. We're talking roster to roster. We don't know what will happen between now and that game with either team. Just a few fall camp notes. Apparently, the defensive line, which we lost 2 draft picks off that defensive line last year. 2 pretty damn good players onto the NFL. And a lot of people, and I'm getting all this information from Chip Brown's write-up this morning on Horns 247. So give credit where credit's due. This is not, I don't get to go to practices, unfortunately. And I don't have a lot of sources, unfortunately. But Chip Brown does from years and years and years of following Texas football. So according to Chip Brown and his sources, the defensive line is widely considered at this point, through halfway through fall camp, the best unit on the field. The players are saying it. There's people at the practices that are saying it. The coaches keep talking about the defensive line players. That's kind of shocking, especially when you consider that the Texas wide receiver group is widely considered one of the top 2 or 3 wide receiver groups in the country. The quarterback room, I think you could argue, is a top 10 quarterback room in the country. And the defensive line is being praised that much and considered better than those 2 groups. I think if that holds true and they actually are, and they don't even have to be the best unit on the team, but if they're one of the top 2 or 3 units on the team, I mean, you look up and down this roster and you look at these different position groups, there is a absolute ton of talent. So if they could sit at the top of the list in the top 2 or 3 of this team for a position group, then I think the defense is going to be pretty damn nasty. And that's something we haven't seen at the University of Texas in a very, very long time. They took a big step last year. The scoring defense was really good last year. They gave up a lot of yards on the way, but I think that's just part of PK's philosophy. Make teams make long drives down the field. They'll usually make mistakes. They'll usually find a way to turn the ball over, or you'll find a way to take the ball away. And then once you get closer to the end zone, you tighten up, force a field goal. It's not all good out of fall camp. There's rumblings that the inside offensive line is still having problems creating space inside. So on those inside runs, the same thing we kind of saw last season, the interior offensive line was getting disrupted fairly regularly on those inside type runs, and that's bad. You obviously want to be able, just like you want to be able to throw the ball down the field and throw the ball short. You want to be able to run inside. You want to be able to run outside. I think what we don't know yet, and this is always kind of the crux, if you will, with fall camp reports. They're playing each other. So is the interior offensive line having trouble because the defensive line is the number 1 rated position group? They're actually are the best position group on this team? Maybe. Or, and this would be bad, is the offensive line just so bad that the defensive line just looks really good? I don't know the answer. We've seen this before. I mean, we've heard every single season after 2009, which was the last time Texas had a really, really good team. They were pretty good in 2018. But the last time they were really good was 2009. And every year after that, we've heard about how this fall camp is different and this position group flashes and this player flashes. And a lot of those times what we found out is it's just because the other guys they're going against aren't that great. And it showed up on the football field on Saturdays when they actually played games. So all we can do is just cross our fingers and hope, man, that defensive line is just kicking ass, and it's really hard for that interior to keep up at this point. That's what I'm going to hope. Video going around the interwebs the other day of Quinn Ewers dropping a pretty absolute dime to A.D. Mitchell, then giving a different camera a really nice big grin. I got to admit, I'm a really tough person to please. You could ask my kids about that. My kids will tell you I am hard to impress. All I saw the first time I saw that clip was the wobble on the ball. I thought to myself, "Why? Where's the spiral? Where's the spiral, Quinn?" But then I watched it a couple more times, and it was actually, wobble or not, a really, really nice throw. He got the ball up over a defender that was close to the line of scrimmage, closer to the line of scrimmage than where the ball ended up, and then put it in a really nice spot where only A.D. Mitchell was going to catch that ball against. I don't know that it was double coverage, but there were two defensive backs in the area by the time the ball got there. So they got Texas Nation, Texas Longhorn Nation super excited. There was all kinds of retweets and requotes and zeets and bragging about that play, and can't blame Texas fans for being excited. We want to see this team do well. We want to see Quinn Ewers do well. We like to see this team do well. We've seen this team so many times over the last decade and a half-ish. Just really, really struggle at times. I think we're all ready for just some old school good football out of the Texas Longhorns. It got to the point with Texas, in the 2000s, they were so freaking good all the time that you almost couldn't enjoy games. You almost couldn't just enjoy the fact that they were doing so well. In fact, like, I remember a lot of my emotional responses to those games were not joy. They were, I found something to pick at. I found something to be upset about. And that's just part of my nature to begin with. I'm a pretty critical person. I'm a pretty I wouldn't say necessarily perfectionist. I would just say, if there's things to do, I only see the areas for improvement in a lot of cases. And I don't necessarily acknowledge all the really good things that happened. But that was like Texas football for me. And then we've just gotten so bad now that I've got to the point where I almost just don't care. I've had those moments where I'm just like, man, I don't even care. I mean, I don't think I've done it. I've had friends that have turned games off and just said, I'm not going to watch this anymore. And I wanted to, but I think I've always kind of been like, we only get so many Texas games every single season. I'm going to stick it out and see what happens. Nothing good ever hardly happened, but now I think it's starting to get fun again. I think we're ready to see some fun. I'll tell you this, even though they lost that game in 2021, the Red River Shootout was a damn good time. The Red River Shootout in 2022 was a damn good time. Even though Texas lost to Alabama by 1 point in 2022, that was a damn good time. I'm hoping as we travel to Tuscaloosa in 3 weeks, roughly 3 weeks, the Texas will show up and make that one a damn good time for us. Back to fall camp. Last little piece of news. Isaiah Nair running around with his brace off. Somebody tweeted that today, and I said, put that thing back on in all caps. That's awesome. Awesome for him, man. I don't know what it is about these ACL surgeries now, and I don't know if there's specific levels of a tear, or I don't know what all goes into that. I know that it's a very, very much so a less invasive surgery today than it used to be when we were kids. Like when I was a kid, there was this one kid, I won't name his name, but he blew his knee out like every year just about. And this kid had scars from like just above his knee that went straight over the top of his kneecap and well past the bottom of his kneecap. These humongous scars where you could tell they just sliced open like the whole top of his leg and did whatever they needed to do to get him hooked up. And now these kids they just barely have little scars. for a full knee reconstruction, and they're healing a lot faster. There's a kid on my son's baseball team tore his ACL at the end of summer ball last summer, and he ended up playing in the spring. He played about the last half of the baseball season, which is, I would think, unheard of. And then you look at Isaiah Nair, and he's roughly a year out from his ACL tear last year. He's running around without a brace on. So good for Isaiah Nair. I'm kind of scared. I say put that thing back on until we play a game. But I think the flip side of that is it must be feeling really good. The medical staff there at Texas must feel like he's in a good spot. I'm excited to see what Isaiah Nair can do this year. I think that had Texas had Isaiah Nair last year, offensively things would have looked a lot differently. Now, I don't know how that would have necessarily translated into more wins. I won't say that, but I think Texas hits a lot of plays downfield last year that they weren't able to hit this year. That they weren't able to hit last year if Isaiah Nair's in the lineup. And I said it a few shows ago, I think Isaiah Nair is going to be kind of the dark horse. I think he's going to have a big season. You've got A.D. Mitchell, you got Xavier Worthy, you got Jordan Whittington. There's a couple of really good freshmen that have come in that have all kind of overshadowed Isaiah Nair. I think he's going to break out a little bit. I'm excited. I'm excited for him. I hope he continues to stay healthy. Hope he gets some playing time. I feel like he will. I was sitting there today and I was thinking, like, what all could I, what are some different things I could talk about? And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. What are my, I love college football. I've always loved college football. I'm not a big NFL dude. I watch them boys with my wife. My wife is a huge NFL fan, or a huge Dallas Cowboys fan. So we them boys once a week during the NFL season. And that's basically the only NFL game I watch. And I'm being like 1,000%. I hardly ever watch a game in the NFL that doesn't involve the Cowboys. And that's just because, to me, the college game is just so much different, and it just appeals to me more. I couldn't tell you exactly why, but that's just the way it is with old Sean from Horn Takes podcast. So I started thinking, like, what else can I talk about? And I said, man, you know what? I'm going to do a top 5 favorite things about college football besides the games. And I'll run through these real quick, and then we'll dig into them a little bit. And these are in no particular order. Number 1, the tailgating. Number 2, the rivalries. Number 3, the Saturdays. Number 4, the family. Number 5, the pageantry. And then as I got done thinking about this, I had a bonus one, and you can't say top 6 things. It just doesn't sound right. So this is a bonus pick, the stadiums. Let's talk about the tailgating. The cool thing about, man, you go to these college games, and some of them are better than others, but you go to these college games and there is just like a sea of tents, smokers, grills, coolers full of beer. You get to see people that you haven't seen in a while. Like, there's a lot of people that, when we used to live closer to Austin, we would hang out with people basically just a few times a year, and it was at a Texas tailgate. And we always could not wait to go back down there the next season, once the season was over, to see those folks again. And a lot of those people have become really close friends. So you see a lot of old friends at these tailgates, and you get an opportunity to meet a lot of new friends at these tailgates. Some of these tailgates, I'm sure you folks know, huge, just absolutely massive. It's really cool to just start having conversations with people and learning who people are and learning about different people, telling stories. And then those become your old friends the next season. The food. Y'all can tell I'm a pretty big dude. A little chunky. Love the food at the tailgates. It'll range anywhere from your simplest, chips and dips with some hot dogs or hamburgers, all the way up to just some of the most. You go to a Texas game down in Austin. Let your nose lead you, and you will find some of the best barbecue and some of the most ridiculous setups to make barbecue that you have ever seen in your life. Some of those guys are rolling with deep pockets, and they've put on a party. So the food is just always, it's just a good excuse to go eat a shitload of food that's probably not that great for you. Then, of course, you got the beer. Cooler upon cooler. Seas of coolers of beer. It's so badass that beer companies will actually sponsor people's tailgates. Some people have these massive tailgates. We used to go to one called the Texas Tailgate Company, run by a man named Jeff Dillard. Jeff Dillard has since passed away. But that guy, man, he always had, this dude went and bought a van, like a big box van, big box truck, to put all the shit that he needed for this big Texas tailgate company tailgate in. Tons of food. He would always have tons of coolers full of beer. Met lots of great people at those things. And I could put away some beer, y'all. We used to before I found out about the Texas Tailgate Company, and really it was in my younger days. I had smaller kids. My dad would come down. My dad lives in Northeast Texas. He would come down on Friday. We would get up at like 6 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, and we would be at the state lots in Austin. And this was back before, I don't even know if you can do this anymore. I think they have like designated tailgating areas now. You can't just go find a spot and set up like you used to. But they used to have these state lots, and we would park, man. We would set up the tailgates. A very good friend of mine at the time was a Texas Aggie, but he came to almost every single Texas game for like 2 or 3 seasons in a row. Come down and hang out and tailgate with us. We would set up the TV. We'd get the food going. Obviously, we had the beer. Blast. The other cool thing about the tailgates, just like the anticipation of the game, right? We would get there early, 7 o'clock when the gates would open for a 7 p.m. kick. You start to get good and lit. Starting to have a good time, starting to eat some really good food. And then as you get closer and closer to game, the anticipation, just more people show up. There's more excitement, like just like an electricity buzzing around the whole campus, around the whole stadium. Texas has kind of replaced the tailgating scene with Bevo Boulevard, which I've talked about that before on the show. Really cool. All kinds of vendors, all kinds of food trucks, all kinds of stuff for the kids to do right there next to the stadium. My wife and I have done that the last few times we've been down to Austin games. It is a blast. Can't beat it. Good times there too. Only thing that's not cool about that is you make these groups of friends, right? And it's hard to do that at Bevo Boulevard. And then I think the other thing that kind of goes along with Bevo Boulevard is Longhorn city limits. It's depending on the time of the game, they have a concert before or after. And it's always these older artists, like these artists, they were cool when you were in your early 30s. And in some cases, and this one, the one we saw last year was, man, my wife and I weren't married yet. We were kids. Third Eye Blind was there last year before the TCU game. So that was pretty awesome. So the tailgating, just one of the And I know they tailgate at like pro games, but I've been to several games at I've been to an NFL game down in Houston. I've been to several in Dallas. Just not the same. The rivalries, big game atmosphere, whether it's really a big game or not. I think big game means different things to different people. To me, big game just means a big game, something you're excited about. It could be because the teams are really good and there's a lot on the line, or it could just be because it's Texas A&M and Texas, or Texas and OU. There's just something about being there before, during, and after a big rivalry game. Just it's hard to describe. It's just an electricity, just an energy that's just different about college football. One of the best rivalries I know there's always arguments about who has the best rivalry game. Typically, you see Michigan, Ohio State head up that list of the best rivalry games. And I don't know. I've never been to a Michigan, Ohio State game. I bet it's pretty cool. I would love to go see that sometime. But I don't know if there's anything more unique than the Red River Shootout inside the State Fair of Texas. Stadium split the way it split, right down the 50-yard line. I mean, you were like elbows to assholes with Sooners, Texas. I mean, you can't. The fairgrounds around the stadium are very compact. And there's just tons of stuff crammed in there, food and drink. And then that stadium is just, I mean, a lot of people don't like it. It's an old piece of shit, but I love it. I think it's cool. There's so much history inside that stadium. I actually got to play a high school football game in that stadium one time, and that was really cool. I played in Texas Stadium that same season, and I thought playing in the Cotton Bowl was just 100 times cooler than playing in Texas Stadium. The Saturdays. Saturdays are so cool during college football season that, further into the season, it starts to get a little cooler, and that's awesome. I love like the smell of fall, the feel of fall. But earlier in the season, it's warm. It's hot. So we'll go out, get in the pool. I'm fortunate enough to have a really nice viewing area, a couple of really nice viewing areas. I've got several outdoor TVs, and man, it is a blast. We turn them all on different games, and we swim in the pool. We cook food all day. We have our beers all day. We keep up with all the day's games. When it cools down, we've got a nice fireplace outside. We throw a bunch of logs on the fire. I've spent many a day out there from 8:30 in the morning with a fire going till, and sometimes when I was a little bit younger, I'd stay out there till 3 in the morning, just chilling by the fire in the cool. Where we live, sometimes you can do both. You can swim during the day and it gets cool enough at night. You can throw some logs on the fire and have a fire. Friends coming by. Saturdays, man. Just something different about the Saturdays in fall. The family. I think college football is a great excuse to spend more time with your family. When I was a kid, I used to watch games with my dad. Back then, man, we didn't have cable. We had an antenna that you had to go out and crank around to get the different local stations. And they didn't broadcast every single football game. Like you couldn't watch. If you're young and you're listening to this, you couldn't watch every single football game that happened every Saturday. It just wasn't a thing. There would maybe be 4 or 5 games on different stations all throughout the day. But I remember watching games with my dad. I remember watching games with my grandparents, especially on my mom's side, huge sports fans. Unfortunately, they're Aggies. But when I was a kid, I remember not vividly, but my aunt. So my mom was a Longhorn. My aunt was an Aggie, and my aunt was younger than my mom. And so I remember as a kid going to visit her in College Station while she was at school and going to games. I know I've been to at least one, maybe two games there at Kyle Field back in the very, very early 80s. Maybe would have had to have been the early 80s, I think, for me to remember it. And my grandpa has since passed on, but my grandma's still kicking. And my Grandma Hiller, she is probably, I won't say she's the most sports savvy grandma on the planet, but she has got to be up there. She loves her some sports. She is an interesting lady. And a lot of my younger times, I mean, I remember going to see the Houston Cougars and Texas A&M play in the Astrodome with them. Just really cool memories. And as I got a little bit older and got married, taking my kids to games. I remember there used to be a park and ride down in Austin. And I couldn't even tell. It was out by the intramural fields. I don't know where, but you'd park, jump on a bus. And I used to take the kids by myself sometimes down to the games. I got some really cool pictures of the kids when they're super little, man. Braden wearing a little jersey, our daughter Kenzie wearing her little cheerleading outfit. I remember some games. I remember some games I would hardly get to see the game because we were up and down going to the concession stand. I bet you I spent $250 a game with those kids. Worth every bit of it. They loved it. Their excitement of just kind of watching your kids experience something the way you remember it. The huge stadium, the crowd, the excitement, just all of those things. Again, really, really cool memories. I wish the kids wouldn't grow up as fast as they do. If you got an opportunity to take your kids to games, man, you should definitely take advantage of that. And then now that the kids are grown almost, man, our daughter's in college, our son's a senior in high school. It's just me and the wife most of the time now. And we go to games all the time, and it's a blast. Like I said, we went to the Alabama game last year. We went to the Red River Shootout last year. Went down to Austin for the TCU game. We're going to hit up Alabama and Tuscaloosa this year. We're going to hit up the Red River Shootout. We're going to hit up the Kansas State game down in Austin, and then the Texas Tech game down in Austin. So 4 football trips for us. We're excited. We always have a good time. Pageantry. So much pageantry with college football. You don't see it with the NFL. The NFL is more commercialized. There's lots of rap music going off all the time, and it's just not the same. Those Longhorns have the show band of the Southwest. I'm a musical type dude, so I love the bands, man. Don't care what you say about it. Just something really awesome about March Grandioso and the Eyes of Texas and Texas Fight. You got the Bevo Parade now, where if you show up on time, you can watch Bevo get out of the trailer and they walk him into the stadium down Bevo Boulevard. There's the Stadium Stampede, which is the players' arrival there at DKR. That's a really cool experience. They line some of the band members up. They go through it. I'm talking, you're like a foot from these guys. Really cool memory I have from 2015. I took me, my son, and my dad flew up to Chicago, got off the plane, got in the rental car, drove over to Wrigley Field for a Cubs game. And then the next day, we were in Notre Dame to watch Texas and Notre Dame. That game obviously did not turn out the way we wanted it to. But that was a really cool day of seeing that campus. And we actually got to see the Notre Dame team walk in and the Texas team walk in, just blind luck, really. But that was awesome for my son at the time. I don't know if he would even remember it. What was he? He would have been, he should remember it. He would have been about 10 years old. I thought it was awesome. I hope he thought it was awesome. And then you got the fans, man. College football fans are just the best. Most of them, not all of them, but most of the college football fans are just awesome people, friendly people. Doesn't matter if you're the visitor or not. NFL fans seem like they're always trying to get in a fight. At least that's my perception. That's my that's what I see when I see an NFL fan, a person that's just about to get into a fight. And then the bonus, the stadiums, man. I remember as a kid, just you go by these like colossal stadiums, man, and they just seem so larger than life. Just unbelievable. And then to get the opportunity to go sit in there, watch a game, it's awesome. And I love college football. Not only your own stadiums, but like, man, now that I'm older, I want to go check out like all these different stadiums. Like, I am excited as hell that I get to go to Bryant-Denny Stadium this year. I was excited as shit, and COVID ruined it. We were going to go to Baton Rouge to go to Death Valley. And at some point, God willing, if I'm still around, when Texas plays LSU on the road, I'll get an opportunity to go do that. Tennessee, I want to go do that. I wouldn't mind seeing a game between the hedges. Wouldn't mind going to the swamp, see a game. Arkansas, I've never been to a game in Fayetteville. I think that would be amazing if I made it out alive. I talked about college fans being awesome, man. I'm not sure about those Arkansas fans. I don't know if y'all count as awesome. Arkansas fans, Texas Tech fans, pretty rough group of folks. Join us Monday. We won't have a show Tuesday. We're going to try to get it done Monday. We'll talk about Week 11 opponent, the TCU Horned Frogs. If there are some recruiting updates, we'll talk about that. Surely there'll be some fall camp updates. Talk about those a little bit. And I'm going to have Nash Talks Texas on the show, y'all. Nash Talks Texas is on YouTube. He's on Twitter. I saw him posting about alternate uniforms the other day, and it just reminded me that that's a fight that Texas fans have at least 2 or 3 times a year. So we're going to talk about alternate uniforms, our football preseason awards for the Texas Longhorns, and, man, all kinds of other stuff Texas Longhorn related. It's going to be a good show. Subscribe to YouTube and the podcast, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube at Horn Takes. You can email me at horntakes@gmail.com. with all your comments, questions, concerns, and criticisms. I love them all. You guys have a good weekend. Hook 'em.